Big Footy Port Adelaide podcast is proudly sponsored by New Vision.
My team, kinda power. I love the power. I love the power.
G'day everyone, Macca 19 here, and this is the Big Footy Port Adelaide podcast coming to you live once again on Port Fan Radio. And tonight, as co-host, we have the lovely Portia.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen.
How are we?
Extremely well. I saw a pretty good game of football on Saturday, and certainly quite different to what we've seen for the rest of the year. I have a few thoughts I'd like to say on that in relation to previous visits I've had where I think people have been quite critical of our fitness. But I think it would be a real struggle for anyone to say that Port Adelaide players did not look strong and tough on the weekend.
Absolutely. 100% spot on there. Look, back on the podcast is Harold Oliver.
Good evening, one and all. I'm with Port Fan Radio royalty tonight. My goodness. Your Majesty. Portia. What a privilege it is. I'm actually red with embarrassment.
I prefer your grace.
Oh, your grace. I'm glad you're in Melbourne because I'm not missing any rings.
2 wins, eh? What an enjoyable weekend. And it hasn't really happened all that much this year.
No, it's been good. It is always a bit disappointed when these sort of wins come at this time of year after the kind of season we've had, where it's sort of a little bit meaningless. But when it's a win in that style, it's the sort of win you're happy to take, and you really just want to see carried over, let's say, for another full year consistently from today and forever, the next 10 years, 20 years, whatever. Just that constant contested, don't mess around, late release of the ball to get the maximum advantage, just that really fantastic style of football.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it should be the minimum we expect from now on.
Indeed. Yeah. Look, let's get straight into it and talk about our love and hate, which is one thing we loved, one thing we hated about Port Adelaide this week. Portia, I'll start with you.
Okay, look, I'm going to start with a Schadenfreude love. Which is going to be that I really, really, really love that Leon Cameron went to GWS instead of Port Adelaide. We talked last week in the preview about how this was really going to be a coach's game, and it was going to, because Kinkley was out there, he was saying exactly what he's going to do with the selections. We watched the match, and he did exactly what we thought he'd do. We basically played a revved-up, turbocharged version of the slingshot all game long, and it took until, I think, the third quarter before we saw GWS in any way use the most obvious strategy to counter what we were doing, which is to play possession football and set up so that your tall forwards can lead into space and mark. They had almost no opportunity to do that. We had fantastic defence that were very accountable on the man. And yes, there were a few free kicks given away, but playing the style that we were, that's going to happen occasionally. But the reality is that if you discard free kicks, the tall forwards of GWS really did not a lot for that whole game, and we were really worried about them pre-game. They've got a lot of quality, and a good key forward is almost impossible to stop. So the fact that we telegraphed our strategy before the game and Leon Cameron didn't have an answer that they could apply us consistently, gosh, I really wouldn't want to be a GWS fan, but I guess no one does because there aren't any.
Good call. What about your love, Harold?
Look, I'm going to go for the bleeding obvious. I have a love that I'm sure we all share for Brendon AhChee. Arch is just about the most genuine and natural person you could ever meet. My eldest daughter and I chatted to him after the Eagles game at Woodville a couple of weeks back, and he was so enthusiastic about playing AFL football and pretty pleased that he'd backed himself in to take that, that game-saving mark in the last quarter of the Phil Walsh tribute game against Collingwood. And so hopefully Arch is going to be, that second big body clearance midfielder to complement Ollie Wines that, Port fans have been dreaming of for the last year and a bit. And on Saturday, look, his confidence and self-belief had grown to such an extent that, despite being nervous on other occasions, when he'd been lining up in front of goal in the AFL, you could tell he was never going to miss that set shot and kicked his third. And look, he was clearly best on ground for me. And, his stats are glorious to read. 11 kicks, 13 handballs, including those 2 by 30-metre left-hand specials. He had an even spread of contested and uncontested possessions. 3 clearances, 5 tackles, 3 goals, and, the most spectacular mark of the day. And look, last week on the Port Fan Radio Maggie's show, so I'll put in a plug for that, Matt and I spoke about, our Magpies and Academy sides wins against the Roosters being the silver lining to what was, a pretty dark and gloomy and cloudy weekend last weekend. And, well, after that breakout performance, and he's hoping there's plenty more to come, Brendon AhChee is perhaps the silver lining to our 2015 season.
I'd agree with all that.
I mean, yeah. We've been crying out for one of our second stringers to have a breakout game all year. And finally, after 20 weeks, Brendon does it. One of them really stood up and, as you said, 25 touches, 3 goals, mark of the day, bump of the day, great hands, clean skills. Not only was it great to see a youngster pull out that sort of performance, but it was one of the performances of the year across the whole list this year. So, he does need to back it up this week, but I was almost getting a little bit of a tear in the eye watching him play that well out there. I mean, we've spoken to him numerous times on the podcast. He's one of our friends at the podcast. We sponsored him on Big Footy a couple of years back, and as you said, he's one of the most down-to-earth guys you could ever wish to meet, and it's just wonderful to see him doing so well.
He's a credit to himself.
Yeah, he's a credit to himself, and we spent a lot of time. We dedicate a lot of games and a lot of development into turning players drafted with late picks or drafted early that aren't performing. And we keep them on the list for a long time, and I feel like it's probably longer than a lot of other clubs do. So it is good to see that occasionally it can actually pay off in our favour, because it wouldn't have taken much for Brendon AhChee to be delisted a couple of years ago, and he could be doing this for someone else, but he's not. He's doing it for us, and if he can become a first 20 or first top 10 player, he'll not only do that, but he'll do that with a unique skill set, which makes him a fantastic strategic weapon for the coach and obviously for the club. It's a really good result, and hopefully he can just find consistency, beat the eventual tags, and become the player that I'm thinking he now believes he can be.
That's it. And what a way to celebrate your new contract as well.
Yeah, well, I know that when we were talking last week, we were talking about the contract, and it just seemed like such a gimme to re-sign him based on the season he'd had already, and that is just icing on the cake, absolutely, and fantastic celebration of a lot of hard work he's put in and a lot of faith that's been shown in him, and I think we'll see the rewards, so that's great. Now we just need to get his brother.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Look, my
nice.
love this week is the aggression and the physicality that we showed across the whole team. And, we haven't really seen that all year except for maybe the Collingwood game. And, from the opening 10 minutes, when we just played footy whilst GWS wanted to sort of go around headhunting our players, to the huge bump from AhChee on Rory Lobbe, Wingard pole driving Lockie Whitfield into the turf. Guys like Hammer and Ebo putting some really big blocks on Tom Bugg at stoppages, and Trengove bossing Rory Lobbe on numerous occasions, and a number of our players sort of getting into Heath Shaw. It was great to see, and GWS started the fights and we pretty much finished them, and we hurt them physically, won the game, and essentially finished their finals chances as well.
Yeah, I don't think there's any doubt about that. It was a really fantastic contested game in a lot of ways. The one thing that I didn't see once, or it might happen but I didn't notice it, is that we didn't have those really annoying early release disposals going upfield. So what I mean by that is where a player sees there's got an option up ahead, and rather than run to the last moment to dispose of the ball, they kick early, which means the player on the receiving end has an opportunity to get mobbed by a zone. That was, I think, the main thing that was really noticeable this week, was that the guy with the ball was running a lot closer to the man than they usually would, which means they have to try and be accountable, which gives the person further down the line more opportunity to do what they need to do to make an effective possession and make an attack. So that is absolutely a baseline minimum of what we should see every week. And that is the one thing, if I could pinpoint one thing, that's the one thing I want to see every week from now on, is just that that brave and calculated baiting of the player coming towards the ball carrier.
Good call. And what about your hate, Portia?
Look, my hate was watching the replay and hearing how often they were talking about sling tackles when I think that the last one they were talking about, was that Westhoff, was it? I forget.
Yeah.
Westhoff. How much responsibility is on the umpire to pay a free kick? Because if the player's fighting the tackle and it's going on for a long time and there's no free kick being paid, either way, or a ball up or a whistle blown, then the only result that can happen to force a result, something happening either way, is clearly to continue the tackle. And the longer you continue the tackle, the more likely it is that players are going to go to ground. So if that is a sling tackle, I think that's just as much negligence on the part of the umpire not making a call in a timely fashion as it is anything that Justin Westhoff's done. It's just really poor management of a situation. And in a game where the umpires are happy to call free kicks at a whisker blowing through the air, the fact that that one was let to go for so long is just kind of ridiculous.
It is. Look, I thought a few years ago they were going to make an effort to call, for a ball up quicker to avoid players getting injured because they're caught in tackles, and they can do a knee or something like that.
Exactly.
That's gone by the wayside now, apparently.
Yeah, and that's exactly what's happened here. The player with the ball's trying to fight it. He doesn't just fall down on the ground because he wants to make it not look like a tackle. Justin Westhoff has got his tackle on and he wants to get it paid, and the umpire hasn't made a decision. So, something's going to happen out of that. And, if there's an umpire fault on that one, and I think that I'd love to see it at least acknowledged before Justin Westhoff gets suspended for 5 weeks.
Yeah. Harold, your hate?
Yeah, I had a few hates, but I think what really annoys me is that, in what seems to be a fairly open year, in that, a bunch of fairly uninspiring sides, including our crosstown rivals, they're going to be playing finals and not us. And I'm generally a fairly pessimistic person when it comes to football, but after, our 2014 finals series and adding what was meant to be the missing piece in our premiership puzzle and Paddy Ryder during the pre-season trade period, I actually was expecting us to be a genuine top 4, if not top 2 team. So I hate reading, hearing and talking about which teams are in the mix of finals this year when, my club, the Port Adelaide Football Club, is not going to be one of them. So I hope the players feel like that too, actually.
Yeah. I think the premiership's still pretty well up in the air as well. So this is really a year where we could have really snagged a flag.
Indeed.
I think that those years happen occasionally and then they become erased in hindsight so that the premiership winner was always going to win, as happened with Geelong beating us in 2009. 2009, wasn't it? Yeah, 2007. God, my years are wrong. Basically, it was a very even year. We all thought we were in with a chance and anyone could win it. But Geelong, in hindsight, and especially with the follow-on they've had, it's now would be considered absolutely destined by the stars, and the hindsight express is in full swing. So I think this will probably be one of those years. I think it's going to be hard for anyone but Hawthorn. Oh, West Coast could win, I suppose. I don't know. But Hawthorn really...
I'd be surprised if West Coast won.
Yeah, I don't know. Hawthorn, I guess, is really the favourite. I can't... Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, right, it is fairly even, but yeah. Hawthorn have got the experience more than pretty much anyone else. It'd be really surprising if they didn't win.
Well, most definitely. They're going for how many in a row? 4 in a row, whatever it is. What are they going for? 3 in a row?
3.
So they're definite favourites.
Mm.
I think they would have been fairly worried if we were there, though. That's the trouble.
Yeah, that'll come up this week, I suspect, more than anything. They'll go, Port are trying to play now. Okay, well, it'll be good finals practice.
Well, maybe not, but yeah.
We'll see.
You never know. I mean, Butcher might have started and finished his career with 160-point drubbings.
Oh, stop it.
Let's hope not. Let's hope not.
No. Give us some hope for next week. My goodness.
Yeah. Well, look, my hate this week, it's just got to be the umpiring. I mean, it was probably the most reactive, inconsistent, confusing performance I can ever recall watching footy. And the umpiring didn't even go against us. It pretty much favoured us in the last quarter, I thought. So it's not necessarily a whinge, but I've never really seen the umpires lose control of the game like that before. And, there were periods in the first quarter where they just completely lost control. And it seemed like their way of trying to gain back that control and maybe sort of separate the aggression out there was to to give a 50-metre penalty every couple of minutes, and I don't know, what was it, 6 or 7 50-metre penalties in the first quarter? I mean, that's just ludicrous. And all it did was make things worse because players got more aggro because they just got more confused. And you look at the 50-metre penalty against Trengo for pushing after the mark, and I reckon Giants players did that about 20 times during the game, and we got nothing for it. And they pull out 2 completely random deliberates from absolutely nowhere in the space of 30 seconds in the last quarter, and wasn't seen before that, wasn't seen after that. And, the main culprit was Jordan Bannister. He was pretty much a D-grade tagger as an AFL player, and he's a D-grade umpire as well. I mean, he can't bounce, he can't view the game correctly, and he's got no consistency in applying the rules. And if he wasn't a former AFL player, I reckon he'd be umpiring in League Creek or Hamilton or, somewhere like that.
Yeah, not only can he not bounce, he can't even throw it up properly. He could only throw it about 2 metres up in the air.
Yeah.
Well, at least we got to vent. Got out all those irritations and frustrations at the ground, yelling abuse at the umpire.
Well, let's go on to our more structured review, I guess. And, it was round 20, came and went and saw Port Adelaide record a hard-fought 21-point win, 16 goals 15 to 13 goals 12. AhChee, Monfries and Wingard kicked 3 goals each, whilst Westhoff kicked 2 goals as well. What did you guys think of the first sort of 10-15 minutes? I mean, I thought it was really nice to see us come out firing in the first 10 minutes, and we seem more determined to play the ball compared to GWS.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, quite fairly, if you were a GWS forward scout watching the opposition, you probably wouldn't have expected Port to play the style of game we did on Saturday. And I think that if you were looking for a game that evidenced that GWS is basically a young side that's still finding their feet, it was probably this game. In that they probably thought they could be have a little bit of muscle, but in reality they weren't prepared for the combination of muscle added to the class that we have in a few of our important players across the field. I do think that there was certainly a really good tempo for us to start off with, and I would love it to be a situation, and we have reverted from this occasionally, but I'd love it to be a situation where when the game gets rough, teams know that Port Adelaide have the advantage, and I think this is probably one in which we certainly took that advantage.
We need to get back to that old school Port Adelaide thing of you never piss off Port Adelaide, because if you do, you're going to get absolutely thumped.
Yeah.
Indeed. Look, and we all love it. The supporters love it as well. We don't like being nice. Let's be hard, tough and hated.
Yeah. Screw being humble.
Indeed. So I thought we dominated the first quarter and a half, like Portia was saying, actually. It's just, we had control of the game, but we certainly missed a few gimme goals and things just didn't quite go our way. And they certainly, there was a few, holding free kicks that went one way that didn't go the other. But we certainly didn't, we weren't dominating on the scoreboard like we were in the field of play. But it's very encouraging what we were doing. It was very enjoyable football, and getting into their faces was a great thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think it was predetermined by GWS to come out and play the man a bit? Because it seemed that way from the get-go. Before the first bounce, there was a bit of niggle, and I think it was Nick Haynes that put down Chad Wingard in the first minute, which led to the goal and all that sort of stuff. It just seemed like they came out like it was a predetermined situation from Leon Cameron to say, play the man, try and rough them up a bit because they can't handle it.
Yeah, look, it could be, and if that was the reasoning, then I don't understand it, but worth a try. It could be that he's trying to dictate to GWS how he wants them to play, and that they just chose the wrong individual players to do it to this week. Because you've got to remember, I suppose, that they are building a team, and so as much as we are, they're setting the standard for what sort of team they want to be in the future. And the sort of team that we already agree will say on this podcast is the way that we want to play in the future is that we want to be a contested football team, and I doubt that GWS are any different in that regard. So it's probably just team development, and they made that call to start like that, and it backfired.
I think we also made a call to play that way as well. I think we've gone away from, that hardness at the man, hardness at the ball, hardness at the ball carrier sort of game. And I think as a club, we've made a real emphasis, focus on, sticking up for your mates and showing a lot of team care and, being aggressive. And because the Magpies have certainly been doing that. You know, against Centrals, they tried to rough up the young players and everyone got around each other. And for a while there, we weren't flying the flag at AFL level. You know, Trengove was, Grimes was kneeing him when he was on the ground and whatnot. But I think we've made a conscious effort too to get into other teams' faces.
Yeah.
To niggle them.
Certainly the captain, he seemed almost on a mission. He seemed to really dislike Thomas Bugg, and Bugg seemed to dislike him, and they were just at hammer and tongs up until half time, and it seemed like every 30 seconds Boak was wrestling with someone.
Yeah. You've certainly got a lot of focus, there's no doubt.
So how did you find our skills? I mean, as you said, Portia, it looked like we were trying to run the ball a bit more. We seemed to have our slingshot going, but I don't know, they just seemed to sort of break down a little bit going forward, inside 50.
I think that it's just a result of the way we were playing. So I'll give you an example, which was John Butcher's first attempt at goal. You saw him lining up, and he was already exhausted, absolutely exhausted, just getting to the point where he could have a kick on goal. And, of course, he absolutely shanked it. This style of game that we played on Saturday, it's a high-intensity style because in a lot of ways it covers for weaknesses in our side. For example, one we have in key forward, which means that we need to just keep bombing it forward and getting it in there as much as possible and hoping we do it enough to score. And so the result of that is going to be inaccuracy because you've been running hard, and if you've been running hard and you haven't had time to get your heart rate down, it's going to affect your stability. It's the closest I can think of, and you're going to have to work extra hard and have the extra focus to be accurate in those circumstances. I don't think it's a coincidence that the areas in which we were the most accurate at goal were probably when there were short leads that players made and took little marks as opposed to the ones on the run. And that's for fairly logical reasons. The shorter leads, they require physical exertion, but it usually means you've had time to plan it rather than just running full pelt and having a go.
Yeah, there's a lot of truth in that. But there's no doubt we still need to work on our kicking skills, especially. I thought our handballing was a lot better than it has been, especially in close in recent times.
Yeah,
I'd agree with that. We seem to be hitting the targets by hand a lot more.
Yeah. Just on the long kicking, there was one thing that I've sort of felt for a while, which is that Brad Ebert is just a really awful kick. Later in the game, I think he had those really fantastic opportunities to set up good marks in the square or good offensive play, and as soon as the ball goes beyond about 15, 20 metres, he's really inaccurate, and he gets in fantastic positions, but it's just really not a good result skill-wise. And I feel that very much with Brad Ebert. It's something that he does a lot, that he has this fantastic opportunity and then he just sort of puts in a really half-assed kick behind it, probably more than other players would in a similar position on the field. Is that fair? I think
it's fair. People have been very critical of Ebert's kicking all year, and I generally haven't thought it's been that bad. But I thought on the weekend it was at an all-time low, and he just missed target after target every time he sort of tried to kick the ball, and I think that was probably his worst game for a while.
Yeah,
that's always been a something that's been on Brad Ebert. His kicking skills haven't been the greatest. So I think when he's highly confident and playing well, that's when he's kicking well. And I think he's been down on form all year, and his kicking's reflected in that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the sad part was that, the reason his bad kickings really stuck out in my mind is because the positions he was getting to were fantastic. So that's why it's particularly disappointing, because he's doing the right things. He's probably following all the team rules, but without that ability to execute, it's just all wasted.
Look, we've brought up Butcher. We might as well talk about how he went out there. It was a very late inclusion for Jay Schultz. What were our thoughts on the future?
He's a bit like Josh Fraser is what I thought. Not an agile, but I know it's one from out of nowhere, but
Yeah.
Josh Fraser was written up as the person or the player. I think the best ruckman below the knees in the league at the time he was playing. And it feels like, John Butcher, he's the best key position forward that crumbs in the league. But the rest of it's really not there to the extent that you need it to be. He tries so hard. He's like a dog that doesn't understand what has gone wrong, and it's just really disappointing. That I don't know. I still haven't seen enough to think he's done it. That he's going to get to the level we need him to. But yeah, good on him for doing well near the end there. But I still think his place on the list is very much in doubt.
There's a lot of people that are very, very happy with how he went out there on the forum on Big Footy. Do you think that's justified?
How do you mean?
Or do you think people are maybe sort of seeing things that weren't necessarily there?
He's coming from a low base for a lot of people's opinion. As Portia said, he was trying his heart out. He did, some really good things. That left foot centering kick that AhChee, marked in front of the goal square for the first goal. That was beautiful. I mean, he didn't give up, even though he sort of ran under the ball a few times or was out of position. He still, tried his all to get to the contest. So from that point of view, it sort of made us unpredictable and worked for us because we actually kicked some crumbing goals that, I can't recall us doing in recent times. So from that point of view, he was good. But he still does a lot of things wrong, and he can't kick that well. Look, I thought sometimes he did run to the right spot, and was in a dangerous position. But either his teammates ignored him or spotted up someone who was in an equally good position, and that happens. But I don't think he's a great leading forward. There's no doubt about that.
No, that's it.
Look,
I really liked the defensive part of his game, and that seems to be the part of his game that a lot of people have loved on the forum as well. The spoils, the chasing, the crashing of the packs. You can never question his desire to go out there and win the footy when it's close by, but as I said in my review, he's pretty much all Vegemite without the bread and butter at the moment. He does all the things that I guess are probably secondary for his role in the team. He does very, very well, but it's my issue with him again is sort of the same stuff I've criticised him for over the years, and that's the fact that he can't really lead, doesn't really know when and how to lead. There's no repeat leading. He generally can't get space on an opponent. He always seemed to be out of position, so that literally the only plan of attack was to actually crash the pack or spoil the ball. He always seemed to be on the fat side when we were coming in, like on the opposite side of where the ball was coming in, and you sort of looked up and you were hoping Schultz was there, but of course Schultz wasn't playing, and you're thinking, Butch, you need to be in that position and leading there, and if you led strongly there, you'd be winning the ball and having a shot on goal. But you just seemed to be almost content sort of on the other side of the ground a bit. I guess that's stuff you wouldn't really notice on the telecast, but it was pretty plain as day at the ground, I thought. And having said that, though, you can't deny the excitement every time he went near the bowl. It was like watching Gary Ablett out there. I reckon I yelled out Butch about 50 times every time he went near it. And the scenes after he kicked that goal were just absolutely mental. There were people high-fiving guys 3 rows back, jumping over bloody rows of seats to get to each other, and it was like we won a grand final.
Yeah, it was a tremendous roar.
It was the loudest roar all year.
Yeah, probably. Look, I think that as far as being on the wrong side of the ground and all that sort of thing, maybe it was actually an intention to free up space, but as regards the ability to bring the ball to ground, I guess I've got just one real concern there, which is that really, it's great for us NFL, but is that really, in the AFL, is that really a viable strategy for that to be like a go-to thing for a key position forward to do? Like, I can understand having that in your bag of tricks as an option for when you need to play a certain way, but as far as a long-term thing, I mean, if your opposition knows that you're going to bring the ball to ground, then it's just as easy for them to set up people roving the pack as it is for you to. And as we know, we don't have fantastic coming small forwards. So even in the current Port Adelaide side, it's arguable that it's not really a particularly good tactical option for us to be doing. So it's a small piece of the puzzle, but whether the value is there for it, I really don't know. I mean, that's really what kind of undid Daryl Poole back in the day as well, isn't it? You know, we're thinking, oh, he's fantastic at SNFL level, and then that style of game just didn't. Even 20 years ago, it was too late for that style of play in the AFL.
Yeah, he couldn't kick very well either, actually.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Very true. Yeah. No, it's all well and good to crash the pack and spoil the bowl, and he did do that very well, but you need to be able to, I think as a forward in the AFL, you need to be able to get space on your opponent, you need to know when to lead, you need to be able to take some uncontested marks and have a few shots on goal within sort of, 30 metres of goal, and that was probably an area that he struggled on the weekend, but I don't know, do you think he'll get another go this week? Do you think he'll stay in the side, or does Schultz come straight back in? Do we bring Lobbe back in? Will he get pushed out?
I can't see why he wouldn't get pushed out.
Yeah, 3 marks in a game probably isn't enough when you've had that many opportunities to take marks, and you'd think Schultz will take more than 3 marks. Maybe not Lobbe though, but I could see how they would bring in a second tall in against Hawthorn, a second ruckman. Ken's been intimating that too, with comments like, he had a great game and he's our vice captain and I know that he can work with Paddy and that sort of stuff. So from that sort of talk, it wouldn't surprise me if Lobbe comes in for sure. And if Schultz is available, why wouldn't you play him?
I'd like to see us play Ryder in the ruck and the 3 tolls up there with Schultz, Westhoff and Butch and see how that goes. But I think it's inevitable that after that sort of game, Lobbe will come back into the side.
Yeah, and I know that why you're saying you'd like to see the 3 tools and Ryder and ruck, but the reality is we need to be having 2 rucks capable of playing AFL games, because if we go to a structure where Ryder is our only ruck and he gets injured, we have nothing. So I can see for a game, absolutely, and I can see where the matchups are right. Yeah, you do something like that, but I don't know whether we have to play Lobbe if he's fit, basically. I don't see there's really an option. If he's fit and ready to go, we play him as well as Ryder.
Yeah. I mean, we took the risk all last year with just the 1 ruckman and only 2 key forwards.
We didn't have a choice.
No.
Well, as far as the ruck went, anyway. But I mean, Paddy, when he has played forward on a few occasions like that, the showdown, and there's a couple of other occasions, he looked very dangerous as a forward. It's just that sometimes he misses some goals as well. But I think, with a bit of continuity, he'd be very dangerous up there, then playing in the ruck occasionally.
That's it.
Yeah.
Look, moving on, let's talk about a couple of the other sort of younger players. Sammy Gray, that was his third very, very good performance in a row at AFL level, and maybe he will stay on the list next year. Do you think these sort of performances are doing him the world of good in terms of getting another contract?
I think I have the opposite of colourblindness, because I find it really hard to see Gray.
Robbie, you can see. You can see Robbie clearly.
Robbie, yeah, absolutely. But even if you said to me to say before you mentioned Robbie just now, who were the best 5 players, I probably wouldn't have thought of Robbie Gray. I probably would have thought of 5 others. So I don't know, but Sam Gray, yeah, I'll have to take your word for it, because when I was watching the game at the ground, I just didn't see him as much, I suppose, as I heard about him after the game, reading things. So yeah, I don't know. Sorry.
Well, once again, he sort of didn't really make all that many mistakes. Maybe the odd error here and there, and maybe that's what sort of, I guess, making people's views a bit more positive, is that they're just happy that he's not making the mistakes that he was making at the start of the year and maybe last year as well. But I don't think you can deny that he's playing a lot better, playing further up the field in his more natural position. Once again, he had 5 clearances, he had 6 inside 50s, set up 1 or 2 sort of goals as well, and he's certainly playing his part.
Yeah, I think that was definitely his cleanest game, and and he's always been an extremely good SNFL player and a genuine ball winner. And I think that you're right; he's playing a more instinctive game when he goes into the midfield. I thought he linked up really well actually on the weekend, and he was pretty clean with his handballs and everything. I've long been a doubting Thomas though, and I think he does need to continue that form, against the likes of Hawthorn and Fremantle and those sort of teams. And and then we can start talking about him being elevated to the senior list alongside Cracker. But I think he still needs to do that. But he's certainly progressing in an upward trajectory that you would like to see.
Yeah. Absolutely. Jarman Impey's another one. I thought he was absolutely exhilarating in the first half, and he was probably a bit wasteful after half time, but that first half really showed a glimpse of the type of player that he could become in the future.
Yeah, basically when you saw Impey go on those runs, he's just... I think he's what we've hoped other players might have been in the past, in that he has a really good turn of speed, but he also has the ability to display really good solid tackles and play a physical game. Sort of that aggressive outside player, which, that's really a staple of a Port Adelaide side, really, to have that kind of player with that mix of outside and inside game. And if he can just keep on his progression, he's going to be a very good player and a very Port Adelaide player. It's really fantastic performance on the weekend.
Yeah, it's hard to describe the excitement that he generates when he starts off on one of those blistering counter-attacking runs. Yeah, but he also did some other great things too. I think Arch kicked to him, and it favoured his opposition. He took a lovely one-handed mark and then set off on a run through the middle of the ground and set up play. And there was at least two of those runs that resulted in goals. That one along the wing was sensational when that ended with that bullet-like pass to Monfries.
Yeah. Speaking of which, Gus Monfries came back into the side this week after his one game in the SANFL, and he did a bloody good job, I thought. Kicked 3 goals, was in the game the whole time, a couple of goal assists, and really didn't give Heath Shaw much of a game as well, which was great.
Yeah, I was pretty pleased with Monfries' game for sure. He was pretty useful in that forward line. He probably would have been even more useful. I did notice that when we were kicking to the top of the goal square, the kicks coming in were really, really high, and that certainly doesn't advantage Monfries, I wouldn't have thought, or Butcher for that matter, I suppose.
Mm-hmm.
But it's. I think he did very well with the opportunities he had available.
Yeah, he brought other players in the game, didn't he? He had 10 score involvements and 3 of his own. But, you remember those little handballs? I think that one that Hartlett got was a handball from him, and when Hartlett sidestepped and kicked the last goal of the game. But he set up a few goals for sure, Angus. And like I said, did a really good defensive job on Heath Shaw.
Yep, totally.
And look, we spoke about in the preview that maybe there was a bit of a concern with Cleary coming out of the side, given that they had the 3 tall forwards plus a resting ruckman up there as well. But it didn't really turn out that way. I thought our key defenders did a pretty good job. I mean, Trengove killed Rory Lobbe. I thought Homsch did a pretty good job on his opponent as well. And look, Jonas, I thought Cameron got a hold of him maybe in the first half a little bit, but Jonas's second half was absolutely crucial to the win. And I thought he was back to his absolute best in terms of his sort of intercept marking and sort of intercept disposals. It was great.
Yeah. Look, the only thing that Cameron had on Jonas in the first half was umpire intervention.
Indeed.
I think that Jonas played a fantastic game, and as I said on one of these podcasts back when Jonas got dropped from the side, that there's no point dropping him because he won't actually learn anything at SNFL level. Well, what did he do at SNFL level? Not much.
Oh, nothing. He was horrendous.
And so you put the top side where he's actually supposed to play, and he comes out and he puts in a pretty decent performance, but he didn't learn a single thing at SNFL level. Having him out at the side, he could have been playing like this last week for all we know. But certainly I think that those 3 tall forwards that we were worried about before the game, that was a team defence. That was what we really saw on the weekend, was a proper team defence where we used 3 tall backmen to negate, and we relied on the smalls to do their bit and create from the opportunities that came from those key forwards not being able to take clean possessions. And that was telegraphed before the game. And again, Leon Cameron couldn't work that out, I guess, or couldn't solve it anyway. So, happy with Hinks right now.
That's it. Hodge did a really good job on Patton, I thought, and O'Shea had the job on McCarthy and kept him to just a couple of kicks, I think. But I think, Cam O'Shea, I mean, geez Louise, I mean, just his disposals. I mean, defensively he was so good, but every time he got the ball, and you can add Jasper Pittard in that as well, I mean, it was just absolute bomb scare moments out there. It was just horrendous.
Yeah. Campbell was his kicking. He left his kicking boots in the locker room, that's for sure. But but Pittard was a bit more than just his kicking. I liked how Dwayne Russell called him Captain Risky. I think it was pretty apt for the way he was playing on Saturday.
I think that a fairly important factor in the game from our perspective was the ability that we had to put uncertainty into the GWS when they were on the defensive. And certainly, Captain Risky is pretty reasonable, because the one thing you can count on Pittard to do is to try and find the area on the ground that scares the opposition. And even if it wasn't always coming off, he was certainly unsettling them, if nothing else.
I think he tries to find the area on the ground that scares the shit out of his teammates and the supporters in the stands. I mean, just that period of sort of 3 minutes where he missed, I think, 4 or 5 handballs in a row. It's just like, come on, Jasper. You know, you look at how he played at the start of the year and just how critical he was in some of those great wins over sort of the Crows and North Melbourne and Hawthorn. And you look at how he plays now, and it's just chalk and cheese. I mean, we know his best is absolutely good enough, and some of the best footy played by anyone in the team. But his worst is just deplorable.
Yeah, I didn't think he was that bad, but what do I know?
But you're right, he started off like a bomb early in the season. He seems to have lost quite a bit of self-confidence as well. I just wish he could have nailed one of those long shots at goal he had, so might have, given him a bit of a boost. Certainly puts himself in dangerous positions like that. I like the idea of him playing as a wingman occasionally too. But
every time he plays on the wing, he's just about best on ground. I don't know why we don't try that more often, to be honest. And I guess the other backman to talk about, Broadbent. I mean, for God's sake, Reece Palmer, 5 goals. Should have had 6 if he didn't drop the ball, and could have had 7 or 8 if he kicked straight.
I think that Reece Palmer was just the pressure valve. We had completely frustrated their preferred method of attack, which is what you want to do strategically. And if all they got left is one, fairly opportunistic half forward that is kicking a bunch of goals, and they still don't win, well, you've still done exactly what we wanted to get from your defence. So, absolutely, you got a bit of a bath from Palmer, but I'm not really too worried about that. The ball was going forward, it just was not always going to be returned to our advantage. We repelled a lot of attacks. To the GWS forward line. For Reece Palmer to occasionally get one through is a bit of a bullocky half forward. I don't really have an issue with that.
So
and I guess the last... You go, mate.
No, I was just going to say, did you like Patrick Ryder's game? I thought he was pretty influential in the ruck, and some of those over-the-shoulder taps were reminiscent of Brendon AhChee at his best, so he looked pretty dangerous doing that.
We definitely
I thought it was one of our best ruck performances of the year, even though we lost the clearances. I think we had a lot more cleaner ball coming out of the midfield than what GWS did, and Ryder was a massive part of that. And he just seemed to have the ability to find our players when they were free, quite a lot of the time, which is something that Lobbe has maybe struggled to do this year.
Can I just tell you who I thought was a really good player that we haven't mentioned yet, and that was definitely Matty White. I just loved his commitment this game. He was not in it the whole game, obviously, but even things like when Reece Palmer stuffed up his bounce, I mean, the person that was absolutely pelting it to make him accountable for that was Matty White, and he just had so many moments where he could see there was a moment to make a difference, and he took that moment. I was just really pleased, because that's the kind of performance you do want to see from your, I suppose, your half-forward types, is the ability to see that it's time to swoop and to execute and just give it everything, and he totally did that multiple times this game. I was really pleased.
Yeah.
His defensive pressure was wonderful, and his skills were fantastic. I was actually quite surprised when he was subbed out. I didn't think he'd be the sub. I thought it might have been Mitchell at the ground, but I was pretty surprised by that. But he certainly had a very good game, and it was one of those games where you look at the stat sheet and you go, well, he didn't really do much, but you actually watch the game and you realise just how big an impact that he did have.
Yeah, our area gave him a standing ovation when he tackled Reece Palmer in the goal square first quarter. It was sensational. My brother said, "I'll give up, Matty," but he didn't. It's absolutely brilliant.
That's one of the funniest things I've seen at the football, I've got to say.
It was a pretty entertaining game like that. There was quite a few highlights and, like Jasper going crazy and all sorts of things happening. Brendon AhChee taking marks. Matty White stripped players of the ball, and it was just pretty amusing.
Well, look, we've criticised Jasper Pittard, and guess who's rung up now? Guess who has rung up?
Isn't he
to
too
us back
busy?
into line?
Hello.
Here he is.
I am very busy. I just got home.
Yeah.
You must have heard us bloody criticising Pittard, surely.
Hey,
Surely not.
hey, Rick, I followed the agreement. I just was really soft on him. I didn't really criticise him at all. So
That's actually
don't
true.
freak out. I'm doing my bit.
Good
Checks in the
work.
mail, Portia.
How did we go with Cam O'Shea's review? Was that completely neutral and unbiased?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah?
He got criticised a little bit too. Don't worry.
Yeah.
Did he?
Yeah,
We did
he
win,
did.
didn't we?
I'll even concede that him missing those shots at goal was absolutely abominable.
They were sitters too, weren't they?
That was shocking.
Yes.
He
kicked
wasn't
kicked
alone.
kicked it like a true defender. So what were the positives from tonight's review then?
There were lots.
We had a
What?
long time before you phoned in. That was pretty positive.
Yeah?
Yeah, I've got my finger over the dump button here, Rick, so you better be quick.
Did you guys talk about the controversial Game Day Village saga?
No, I haven't mentioned that.
Nope.
No, you haven't mentioned it. So what do you guys think about the potential squeeze that's being applied to the Tennis SA from the SMA about our Game Day Village?
Tennis SA has the liquor licence, yeah, so the SMA, I guess, is sort of putting the pressure on them to sort of not allow the club to run these sort of events, which would be pretty disappointing considering that the SMA with talks with the Crows about creating a new shed. So it would be very hypocritical, but also pretty apt, I think, for the SMA to sort of block us from sort of earning some cash by doing the Game Day Village whilst they're creating a big new premises for the Crows.
I didn't hear about that.
Oh, that is
Yeah.
bloody typical.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? I wonder if the SMA would care if we sold the beers for $9 and gave them $4.50 or something. Probably not, but it's just another way of trying to exert some control over us, I guess, isn't it?
Yeah, it would be really, really good if we could just sort of secede from South Australia completely. That would just be so fantastic. Just, like hold a referendum like Scotland, except actually vote it through. That would just be the best thing, I think, for everyone.
Yeah, I think the issue I have, and I think Finbar quoted on the forums today, is that thanks, or it was either him or Trivey, one of the two classic posters. Thanks the SA government. Spend our $600 million and then give the power to two rebel organisations and they probably could have done that component of it a little bit better, I guess. But yeah. And what about our man at the Arch? That was the other one. I know you've probably spoken about him in great detail, but is that the key feature story of the weekend?
We love him.
Yeah, he's great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We just need more of it.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah,
Well, he just needs to back it up in the next couple of weeks, I think. And it would be pretty harsh to expect maybe 25 touches and 3 goals against the Hawks, but you never know. I mean, this might be the making of Arch, and hopefully it's something that cements himself in the AFL team for the rest of this year and hopefully next year as well.
I'll ask a quick question. What do you think the response will be if AhChee gets named as the sub next week?
Oh. Don't
Who's
even
wrong?
go there.
From me or from everybody?
From everyone.
Surely that just could not happen.
Can't happen. It won't happen. Don't be silly, Portia. You're talking silliness.
We would know that Ken's trolling us if he did that.
It would be the biggest kick in the guts, really, to a player.
Well, look, after
It's not gonna
Cleary
happen.
being best on ground and getting dropped, I'm half expecting AhChee to line up in the SANFL next week.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's move on and talk about the SANFL because it was a pretty exhilarating result for Port in the SANFL as well, with the Pies winning 14 goals 11 to 14 goals 10 at the Bay against Glenelg on Friday night. And look, spoken at length about Brendon AhChee and his breakout game, but there was a kid in the SANFL called Ben Salford who had his breakout game as well, and he was an absolute superstar with 40 touches and 4 goals, whilst Aaron Young, Paul Stewart and Billy Frampton kicked 2 goals each. This was just one of the great wins of the season for the Maggies.
Was it ever? And 1 point was even sweeter. We were talking about that earlier against Glenelg, just beating them in the last minute. But you're right about Ben Salford. That's his third really good game in a row at SNFL League level as well. So great job for the one club setup, and he's a consummate team man too, Benny.
I mean, just his stats are just ridiculous. I mean, 40 touches, 5 marks, 6 tackles, 14 clearances, 9 inside 50s and 4 goals. I mean, that's just ludicrous.
That's the best on-ground performance, isn't it?
Settle down, lad.
Yeah, I suppose almost Aaron Fiora-esque, really. I think that really game.
Aaron Fiora-esque.
What?
Yeah.
Let's go on back a bit.
Look, when they're in your brain, they're in your brain.
That's it. But yes, one of the great comebacks of the year, and I guess the most important part for me was that the Maggies over the last sort of 18, 24 months have lost a lot of close games. We seem to get near enough, but really struggle to get over the line. And it looked like this game was going to be the same. I was half expecting us to lose by 5 points, but to get over the line and actually win a close one like this was it's absolutely brilliant.
Can I ask you a question?
Was it ever?
Do you think the players actually care about beating Glenelg like we used to?
Oh, not at all. I mean, what have Glenelg done in the last 20 years? Nothing. So probably not, but it's great for the supporters.
Yeah.
I think the players care about winning as well. I think
winning.
they're a very close-knit group. I don't know if you saw, Portia, there's a YouTube clip of them singing the song afterwards, and it was a pretty rousing rendition. Those sort of close wins. I think that's what Macca's touching on. To achieve those close wins, especially when you've been down and coming from behind. I think they really do inspire a group. Yeah,
I've got no doubt that the players like winning, and they've got a good amount of camaraderie. But I don't know. I'm just now thinking, like, back in the day, Port Adelaide versus Glenelg, that was one of the ones that you just always wanted to win, because you could lose to Norwood and you kind of respected them, but Glenelg were just scum.
Yes.
And now it's sort of like, oh yeah, Glenelg, okay.
Well, Glenelg are basically the Carlton of the SANFL, really. They've just sort of done nothing for sort of 20 years, and that's about it. So they've lost their sort of aura, and I guess you're right in the terms of beating Glenelg doesn't have that same sort of impact as what it once did. But I don't know, to hear sort of Cornsey whinging on radio about the one club thing and all that sort of stuff again, and how Matty Lobbe by himself has earns more money than the entire Glenelg salary cap. That makes it all worth it, I think.
Yeah, I guess that we sort of the SNFL really should just have Graham Corns on the payroll permanently, because I think he's the only person that really keeps people angry enough to be interested in it.
That's it, absolutely. Speaking of Lobbe, we might as well talk about him, because he had 19 touches, he had 3 marks, which is a miracle in itself, 62 hit-outs, 6 tackles, 6 clearances and a goal. There's not really much more he could have done out there.
No. It's one of those things like with Jonas, in that when you drop an AFL senior player back to the SNFL, which is nowhere near the standard it may have been in the past, it's just kind of pointless in a lot of ways, unless there's something really specific you're doing it for. So it's good that he did well. He needed to do well. If he didn't put in that sort of performance, we'd have some real questions, I'd say, as to whether he should have even been playing. Would mean he was horribly injured, but it's a good result, and he should be back on the side.
Yeah, I think Monfries, was dropped and did the same thing. Did all he could to get reinstated in the team. So I'm expecting that Lobbe will be reinstated as well, especially against Hawthorn.
Yeah. But it's kind of the Jonas situation that you mentioned just before, Portia, where he's gone back. He was always going to have this sort of game against no-name ruckman for Glenelg, and what do we actually learn from this?
Nothing.
But hopefully the coaches want him to learn something. I know exactly what you're saying, but there must be a reason why he has been dropped to that level, especially by Ken, because Ken loves him.
Yeah.
Well, he's been dropped because he was a liability at
Well,
AFL. That's
true.
why. So you're sort of stuck between a rock and a hard place because he really has been a bit of a liability in his ruck work at AFL level, and he's just been absolutely nothing around the ground. But he was always going to go back to the SANFL and dominate like this. So I don't know. Maybe it's just a matter of confidence, and he's had a big game. He's had a lot of the ball, taken some marks, kicked a goal. Hopefully, he can come back in and bring that sort of confidence to his AFL game.
I think Ken's trying to recreate, what happened to him when he was playing under Blight. Got dropped back to the reserves and had 50 touches, and he was asked, "What did you learn from it?" That I don't want to play reserves again. So.
That was very. I think that more than anything, what we really learned from Lobbe being dropped back is probably that the SNFL is not an environment that's going to be worthwhile for players that aren't recent draftees, and that really maybe we should just try to get to somewhere else again. The VFL's, you'd have to presume, with the number of AFL players in it, is a more important competition and more relevant. But it's pretty clear the SNFL is not now.
No, we need a national reserves competition as well.
Yeah, we're at that point. There's no doubt.
I guess the last player that I want to mention is Billy Frampton. He had a really good game, 10 touches, 9 hit-outs, kicked a couple of goals, took some really strong grabs as well up forward. He's been in pretty good form and has really, really impressed with the Maggies.
He's a bit of a wild man, and he's certainly already a cult figure amongst those of us that do go watch the Magpies occasionally, and because he's very aggressive and he really plays that old-style Port tall man sort of role, protecting others and going in hard and really aggressive at the contest. So. Yep. We love that. Do you think
the style will translate to the top level?
People do say he's a bit more of a forward than a ruckman, but look, he's very mobile as well. So, he's not going to be one of these stodgy, slow-running ruckmen. He's got the mobility for AFL. He can clunk a mark, and he's a competitive beast. So they're all positives.
Yeah. Okay.
Indeed. All right, well, I think that wraps it up. A very good weekend for Port Adelaide.
Yeah. Very satisfying.
Yeah. Nice to be on after a win, that's for sure.
Hasn't happened often this year, so it's great. Great when both teams win, and we can have a good chat about it.
Totally agree.
So, thank you very much.
Too easy. Until next time. Can't Port Adelaide.
Count the power.
Goes back. Lockwood can unload. Oh, he goes for top. The old barrel. What a kick from Bowen Lockwood. Where did that come from? Well, Port Adelaide held the ball up. They had no one to kick it to. There was about 4 or 5.